Hey everyone, thanks for taking a look at my next tutorial here on Cinema 4D. Today I'm going to be using the cloner and shader effector to create something similar to this. And you'll see in this version I did a little bit of post editing as well in After Effects to kind of blur out the edges. Depending on how long I go with this, I may or may not cover that as well. So we're going to start off in Cinema 4D, and this is the project template that I pretty much open every time that I want to start something new in C4D. Simply a sphere in the middle of the scene with a few lights, and there's targets assigned to each light that look at the sphere. So anytime I move a light, it's always going to be pointed right down at the middle of the scene. Also, I typically, under my render settings, will start off in physical with this kind of set down to low. Let's see, what else? I guess that's it. Normally what I would then do is turn off the sphere so it's not visible. And next thing we do is create a cube. And this cube, let's, I don't know, let's make it 50 by 200 by 50. We're going to create a cloner, drop the cube into the cloner, set that to grid array, set the Y to 1. For scaling purposes, I know that the size of my photo is 4800 by 3200, so let's set this to 480 by 320. And for scale wise, with the lights, that's okay, but obviously these cubes are way too small. So let's set this down to 5 and 50 maybe, doesn't really matter. And then back in the cloner, and of course there's a million different ways to get this. I could have just scaled up the lights and everything else, but why not? What the heck? So we'll fill in the gaps here. Let me just scroll in here. I just want to make sure that these cubes are close but not touching. Close but not overlapping. Okay. The next thing now will be to, in fact, let me turn off the cloner so I can get in here a little better. On the cube, let's set the fillet there to 0.1, I suppose. I just want a tiny little cap there, or fillet, so that we can catch the reflections. So if we make this, I don't know, 0.05, yeah, barely even visible there. Now if I turn the cloner back on, zoom out again here, next thing is going to be to create a material using a photograph. So here's a picture of one of my kids. This is Isaiah, going into high school now. But I thought it was a good shot of him kind of boxing out this guy from the other team. So what I did was, for my desktop, I'll do it again here, but for my desktop where I had that photo saved, if you drag a photo up here, it automatically creates a texture with that image in the color channel. So I already did that, so I'm going to take that, drag it up, assign it to the cloner. You'll see what it does is it puts that image on every single surface. So we need to change this to flat. And let's see, I started this toot earlier and kind of messed everything up, so you'll see I already had this selected. So I'm going to go out of there. Bear with me. This is set to flat. If I right click here and I do fit to region, see the cursor now turns into this little plus sign. So now if I grab that whole thing, it fits this picture to that region that we just highlighted. So, and now if we rotate around, you see how that texture is sticking to the individual cubes within that cloner. Next thing I need to do with cloner selected is go to MoGraph, Effector, and we're going to use the shader effector. And you see immediately that it messed up the size of these clones. And that's because under parameters it's set here to scale. And we don't want this to be uniform. So if I uncheck uniform, we'll make this 1. I'm not positive on this setting. In fact, when I did this before on the example that I showed you, I think I affected position, the Y position of these clones, as opposed to the scale. I think it'll work either way. So I'll do it this way for now. So under shading, a lot of people have probably have experience using the noise within the shader like this, but what I'm going to do is put this in the color channel, and now it allows you to drag a texture tag in there. So this texture with the picture, I'm going to drag that in there, and now you can see where it already where it's affecting these clones based on the colors. And my understanding is the lighter the color, the more it's going to affect it upwards. So let's zoom in a little bit and see if that's working the way that I had planned. We might have to drag a couple of things around. So from what I can see, it doesn't look like there's a correlation between the color and the way it's affecting this. So temporarily, we're going to cut these in half. So 93 divided by 2 and 62 divided by 2 would be 31. And that's just to speed up the viewport here, but you can kind of see it's not positive. So I'm going to highlight this. I'm going to select the texture tag here. I'm going to go to the texture mode, and you can see how this is. Yeah, it's not straight, and I don't know how to get that to line up perfectly. I have no idea. So let's fix it. So from the top angle, we're going to straighten this out a little bit so it's parallel. From the front angle, I'm going to level this off also. And then from the right, let's take a look and see how that looks. That looks nice as well. So now let's see. It looks like the lighter areas are being affected more than the darker areas. For example, the whites here are up high and these blacks are lower, and this kind of yellow strip up top. So from what I can tell, it's looking good. So let's go out of the texture mode there. Go back into the clones. Zooming in here, and let me just do a quick render, and let's just see if this is looking right. Let me go back to, I'm going to try something. This position. All right. So it's definitely lined up right. And of course, the more of these cubes that you put into the cloner, the more accurate that this effector will be. For example, if we go into cloner, let me hit save here. If we go into cloner, actually, you know what? I'm not going to do that. Otherwise, they'll be sitting here all day rendering. For a second here, let me turn off that effector. Yeah. So I'm actually going to cut this down to like 40 so it's not quite so dramatic. All right, so my camera is selected now. And we're going to start off zoomed in. I'm going to start off zoomed in here. I'm going to right click, drag this over so it's a little bit crooked. Basically want this camera to be not very, not straight, I guess. So in the camera, hit coordinates, I'm at frame 0. I'm going to activate these keyframes. I actually want to set this to 150 frames, so it's a 5-second clip. Go all the way to the end. Now I'm going to scroll out to where I want to end up with this. Actually, you know what? Let me go back to there. Right click, animation, delete track. I'm erasing these keyframes. What I'm going to do, instead of animating one camera, I'm going to use another camera tool just in case anybody's not familiar with that. So the first camera is going to be right here, zoomed in. So hit Control, drag this down, it creates a duplicate camera. I go into that camera, I'm going to zoom back, come right about here, level out the scene just a little bit, create another camera, go into that one, and come right over the top, come in a little bit. Alright, so when we animate these, we'll start here, it'll come back here. I'm going to move in a little bit with that camera, and then it's going to wing its way right up here. So with these three cameras selected, I'm going to do, what is it, create camera morph. That brings it up here. And here's how we automate this. Because I had these three cameras selected, it starts here from 0 to 1 to 2. And now this blend is how it would animate. Let me go into this. This blend is how it's going to animate from one to the next. So at frame 0, we're going to start there. We get to the end. Come there. So now you can see how this will animate. And of course, if you don't like the speed at which it's transitioning from the first to the second to the third camera and so forth, obviously you can set as many different keyframes within there as you want to, and I guess change up this blend to where it might go faster from the beginning to the middle as opposed to the middle to the end and things like that. So this is good enough for me for now. I don't want to spend all day on this. So file, save. Next thing I'll do is go into this material. It's already set up with some reflectance. I'm going to delete the specular, add GGX, layer mask. I'll set that to Fresnel. bring down the specular here and do a quick render to see how that's looking. Alright, I might actually, when I do the real render, what I might do is dull this down a little bit. But one thing I forgot to do is, and I think I show this in like every tutorial that I do, but I love this tool so much. It's this SIBL loader. And if you do a web search for that, you'll find it, and everything is free. And here's one that I just pulled in today. In fact, there are a few new ones that I just pulled in today. I think for a sports scene, this might work well. I don't want to set up GI. I don't want to load the background. I've already got lighting, so I don't need the sunlight, and I definitely don't want to turn off the existing lights in my scene. Now if I apply that, if I do another test render here, now you can see the clouds from that HDRI file reflecting off this now. Alright, so the next thing I need to do is, actually let me come in here and just set this roughness up to like 3. That's good. What else do I need to do? I've got the keyframing done to where it's going to scroll out like this. I've got the reflection set up. I've got the HDRI background. I think that's good. In the original, I put a couple of like little poles here, basically to give perspective, so it doesn't look like this thing is just flying in space. That doesn't matter to me today. What I did in the first one is this also. With the shader, I think I keyframed the first time. I keyframed this from, having a value in the beginning so that these stood out. But then when it gets to the end, I don't want that. I don't want that shading to be in place. So I think I keyframe this down. But what I'll do this time is under Effector, I'll keyframe the strength. So I want it to be at full strength until, I don't know, here. It's good enough. And then by the end, I want this down to 0. So set another keyframe. Go back to the beginning and hit File. Let's see, Save. Double check a couple of things here. Oh, you know what? For animations, I think I'll go to standard for anti-aliasing, best with 1x1 and 2x2. Set this to Gauss. Right click, ambient occlusion. I'm going to save this. So I'm going to save this to, let's see, to my, to my tutorial folder. We're going to call it render. For this, because I don't think I'm not going to pull this into After Effects, in which case normally I would do PNG files in case the render bombs. But so we'll just run this as QuickTime Movie. Under Options, set this to H264. Under Output, make sure I change this to all frames. Save one last time. So I'm hitting render here. Alright, so obviously this is going to render for a little while here. I'll let this finish. I'll come back, show you the final result. Thank you. Whoops. I went to turn off the recording and I just about killed the render there. So, alright, I'll be back. Thank you. Alright, the render is still progressing. It looks like we're just over halfway through. It's taken like 3 minutes per frame now. I think because of all the geometry in the scene, not to mention the roughness that I added to the reflections. So anyways, I'm gonna sign off. I'm gonna let this thing render out. I'll take the finished product and I'll tack it on at the end of the video. So thank you again for watching. I really appreciate it. I hope somebody picked something up to help you moving forward. Thank you.